Cheryl, are you here with us?
Hi, this is Neal with Graveside Paranormal Tours, gravesideparanormal.com, Graveside Paranormal on YouTube. How's everybody liking the tour tonight? Adam, are you here? Talk to us.
Hello everyone, this is Neal with Graveside Paranormal presents Spirits by the Graveside. Tonight, we are going to be doing something a little bit different. I sometimes get emails from people, I get phone calls from people, so I thought to myself, let's put something together for people where they can all tell their own personal stories. So what we're calling it Hooky Spooky Stories. Actually, my wife came up with the name Hooky Spooky Stories, so a shout out to Sue on that one. She did a great job. We were sitting back, we were celebrating something that we were celebrating, and we were having a couple of drinks. So he goes, I got it, Hooky Spooky Stories. And I said, that's it. I go, that's the one. We're going to do that from now on. So tonight's date for the recording is April 1st. April Fool's Day. And it's also opening day for baseball. I have my White Sox shirt on. And so go Sox. We are recording for the 3rd. For actually the 4th. For April 4th. It'll be going off at 7 o'clock. You'll catch it on Spotify, Anchor FM, or YouTube. We're also on the Google one now too, the Google podcast, which is really, really cool. I like knowing that we're all out there and stuff. Now, before we get started, we always start out because it's called Spirits by the Graveside. Get your favorite drink, no matter what it is. Like I said, I've been trying to take it easy on things, so I'm trying to drink as healthy as I can. So today I have another kombucha from Door County, Wisconsin. Grape memory. You see, I need it. So what I'm going to do is pop your top. Go ahead and take that off. Take a little swig. Now on these, I believe you can only drink half of them at a time, these kombuchas. At least that's what they tell you. Last time I had one, I think I was with doing the show with Jack, and I drank a whole thing of Energy One, and I went to go downstairs to go watch Justice League with my son, and I kept getting up and down, and I guess I drank too much of the Energy One. But it was a good taste, I have to be honest with you. So, let's get right into the news. All right, on March 11th, 2011, a little over 10 years ago, a tsunami ravaged the Tohoku region of Japan. The deaths exceeded over 18,000 people. Now that's horrible, but here's where it gets really weird. Many years after this tragedy, there are eyewitness accounts of tsunami ghosts from the tsunami, lost spirits probably. Author Richard Lloyd Perry, who wrote an article, Ghosts of the Tsunami, and how the sightings of these apparitions are rising and is like an epidemic. Some see mysterious figures on the beaches, and some say they were possessed by the fallen. There's a guy who said that he was possessed by somebody when he was walking across the beach. Now, I do know through traumatic and dramatic things that happen in any kind of timeline that you do get residual hauntings. That there is a fact. Just like in the Civil War, could they be reenacting? Because, once again, or could it be lost souls? Sometimes there's lost souls, they don't even know they're dead because they have the umbilical cord to the soul. That a lot of people believe, and I do believe that, the umbilical cord to the soul, and sometimes something happens really fast, like a car crash or something like a tsunami, and all of a sudden you're thrust out of your body and the umbilical cord just snaps. And sometimes you do have lost souls that don't even know that they've passed, so they just roam around. Could this be happening in Japan? Maybe so. Very interesting story. moving on to a show that I was watching on HBO Max. It is called a show called The Storm. It's a documentary about QAnon. Now, I wasn't too familiar with QAnon. I understood it through passing of people, but I didn't understand how detailed this was on this documentary. It's really weird. If you're into conspiracy theories and about QAnon, you're more knowledgeable than I am about QAnon. It's about this guy who puts out these messages to a lot of people who like Donald Trump. And a lot of them believe that this guy is messaging them of like things that are going to happen, almost like a Nostradamus of things that are going to be. And what's odd about it is some of the things that this guy has said, and now this is just me looking at this, is that have come true. But it's odd that there's these guys who are playing behind the scenes who are administrators on certain websites. Could they actually be the Q that are leading people along? If you're into that conspiracy theories about stuff like that, it's basically a down the rabbit hole kind of documentary. Just follow me and everybody come on with. Go ahead and check it out. I think it's interesting. Another thing. So I purchased from a thing called numbskull.com. Right here. This looks exactly like... Yes, it is. Looks exactly like the Ghostbusters box. But what it is I purchased this, I think, for $30. You take one of those scented cones and you put it inside. And you put one of those little scented cones, you light it. And what's cool about it is, and I haven't got that in the mail yet, but I can't wait to try it, is you light it, and where you have the opening in it right here, is that you'll get the smoke coming out to make it look like how when they captured the ghost. So when I saw this, I said, oh, hell yeah, I gotta get this thing, man. This thing is freaking awesome. So I went and bought that. It was like $30. It's off of numbskull.com. It also comes with a little platform here that you can place it on. So I'm definitely going to be checking that out because, anybody who's into paranormal definitely got into it probably because of one of the things is majorly is the Ghostbusters. So that brings us into our show about ghosts. Stories. This is going to be called Hooky Spooky Stories. I want to welcome in right now. Very interesting story, very interesting lady. Wendy Rose Williams. And we'd like to talk about Wendy Rose. Welcome anyways, Wendy Rose Williams. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Good.
Thank you for having me, Neal.
Oh, anytime. Just so our audience knows, I got an email from you. And I got back to you, I would say, within about a day or two after that. And she told me a very interesting story. And I want to present the story as The Haunting of Wendy Rose Williams. But before we start her really cool story, tell us a little bit about yourself, Wendy. How'd you get into the paranormal or supernatural?
I got into it in a very, very funny way. I met the soulmate that had the contract to wake me up spiritually, and I didn't even really know what all that meant. This happened 10 years ago in 2010, and of all the unlikely places, we met via Match.com.
Really?
I don't think anybody goes on Match.com looking for their spiritual awakening, but that's what was there for me.
Yeah, I don't think they advertise that on there.
They do not advertise that. I think it would have people not sign up for the site.
Yeah.
But he introduced me to Dr. Michael Newton's Journey of Souls and to the concepts of reincarnation and past lives. And I went for my own first session to have a past life regression about a year after this gentleman and I met, and it was so helpful and so life-changing that a few years later I knew it was time to train and became a hypnotherapist and a past life adventure guide myself.
Cool. Now, how long did it take you to become a hypnotherapist?
It's a journey that continues. I first trained one-on-one with a gentleman in the UK that was one of Dolores Cannon's students, and he had 20 years of hypnotherapy experience, and I trained with him. And then about maybe 2 years later, I trained with Dr. Brian Weiss, who wrote Many Lives, Many Masters.
Yes.
And then a few years after that, I trained with a gal who had trained with Michael Newton originally in the Newton Institute.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a continual wonderful process.
Good for you. All right. Do you want to get into your story?
Absolutely, because I was not expecting my ghost busting adventure either.
Sure, nobody ever does.
No one ever does.
One day you just wake up and there it is.
It just really sneaks up on you. So what happened was I married in late 1989, and we were fortunate to purchase a home a couple months later. So we are newlyweds, and we were living north of Boston in a small, wonderful little town called Boxford. It has more horses than people. And it was a tiny town of about 3,000 people. And we purchased an older colonial, and what I did not know was that colonial was already occupied. We thought it was all cleared out.
Okay.
But it was not. And my husband traveled extensively on business at the time. He was gone about 50 to 75% of the time. And very, very quickly, one of the first nights that he was gone, I just, close up the house and go to bed, and I'm not anxious about it. I'm like perfectly fine with it. I'm thrilled to be in our new house. And I go to sleep, and I start having the most vivid dream. And I could tell it was hundreds of years ago. But what happened was I start hearing footsteps coming up the stairs. And our master bedroom was right at the top of the stairs to the right. And this scared the bejesus out of me.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because it was 1990. I don't have a landline in the bedroom. I don't have a lock on the door. And I'm home alone. And in a really remote, every home was 2-acre minimum, so the houses are really far from each other. Mm-hmm. And I'm hearing these footsteps come up the stairs. The door was closed, but it's not locked. And I'm wide awake, just rigid with fear at this point. And I get up as quietly as I can, and I'm like, okay, what do I do? And because there's no lock, I'm trying to put a chair under the door to jam the door in case this person's going to try and come in the bedroom. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, what do? I can't call for help. I can't climb out a window. What do I do? So I'm just holding this chair there, just praying for the next 15 minutes or so. And I've heard nothing. So I'm like, oh my goodness, because the footsteps just stopped at some point. They just faded away. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, I can't go back to bed like this. Obviously, I've got to check the house. I've got to clear the house and make sure no one broke in, and I've got to be prepared to dash for the phone. So I do this, and I check the whole house. My heart is just pounding out of my chest. And I check the whole house. There's no one in the house. There's no window broken. There's no, doors not been broken into. And there was fresh snow. So I even turned on the outside lights and took a flashlight and looked, and there's no footsteps outside the house. So what's with the footsteps coming up the stairs? How did that happen?
Now let me ask you just a quick question. I don't mean to stop you, but
Please.
Were they loud, or were they if somebody someone was in your house that is usually in your house, it's somebody's walking around, were they loud footsteps? They
were small and delicate. That's a great question. They were very clear, but they were, my sense was it wasn't like a big guy clomping in his work boots.
Right.
It was just much more delicate than that. But I clearly heard them because they woke me out of the dream, and I was wide awake. So it turned from a dream to a lucid dream to an actual experience where I'm wide awake, absolutely hearing the footsteps.
Wow.
So in the morning, I'm like, okay, gotta go to work. I know the first thing I'm going to do is call a locksmith. I do that, and the locksmith agrees to meet me after work and puts a really good deadbolt on my bedroom door. so that I can just, sleep well at night. We didn't have an alarm on the house. This is before cell phones, it's just, and I just have to prepare myself and, be comfortable and feel safe in your home. Because when you don't feel safe in your home, that really is not a good place to be.
No, you got to feel safe in your home. I agree with that.
Exactly. So what happens is the next night I have the same dream, and it starts happening again. And I get to the point where I'm kind of seeing the walls of the house fall away, and I get the sense of going back in time. And I'm seeing this big rock in my yard. So I'm like, oh my goodness, is this like some sort of being that was here a long time ago? And I'm not as afraid because I've got the deadbolt on the bedroom door. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to tune into, and it was very misty. It was hard to see, but I'm just sitting upright in bed trying to understand what's happening because I've never had an experience like this before. And I could see a small, she looked like a teenager or a small, like young woman, like late teens, early 20s. And she looked like colonial America because they had that very distinctive clothing of the little white kerchief on their head and a little white apron over the clothing. So I'm just watching her, and she's trying to climb up on this big rock. And just the energy, Neal, it was just heartbreak. There's just this heartbreak emanating from her, and I'm like, what's wrong with this poor?
So you're feeling off of her these emotions from her.
Oh, the emotions were so strong. I think I was actually crying. It was just such heartbreak from her.
Now, would you say, and I don't mean to interrupt,
please.
Would you say, because there's a point to what I'm going to say, that you were like in a dream state when you were doing this, or would you say that you somehow put you backed yourself up into a good subliminal state, where like you're what's the word I want to use?
Like a fugue state, an altered state.
Yeah, like an altered state before you go to sleep. Do you do a breathing technique sometimes?
Nope. I was a young MBA, happily married, newlywed. Don't have any knowledge of spirituality. Don't, just like a casual Christian, and just I wouldn't have known what a breathing technique was.
Wow. Because a lot of people, they put themselves like that to be able to move on to that next realm like that, or into that deep state. So that's very amazing for someone who has never ever practiced or exercised that in their life. That is amazing. Please continue on. I'm sorry.
Yes. Oh, no, please. You're asking all the perfect questions. Thank you. So I'm watching her, and I can see her climb up the rock, and I know she's looking toward the water. She's looking toward the east, even though we didn't have a view of the water from where we were living inland. But I'm just asking myself, because I don't think to communicate with her yet, I'm just asking myself, what's wrong with this poor woman? Why is she so heartbroken? And I could immediately hear she's waiting for her beloved, and she's been doing this for a very long time, but he's not going to come, and she doesn't know what's happened to him. So that was just like this feeling of this just energy being so stuck and so repetitive, because I had this dream and this experience, because it was both, many times. We lived there about 3.5 years, and I dreamed about her several times a week, always when my husband was gone, but as I said, he traveled a lot. So
let me get this right. You had that one dream, the first dream, where you were always feeling this girl's very strong emotions, and this was a dream that continued on many times after this, correct?
It did, and it was like watching a film clip where like I'd learn a little bit more each time. It's like, I stopped the movie, so to speak.
Did you ever
notice? I would learn a little bit more each time. And I got over my fear of her because I realized she was a ghost.
Right.
And she was a ghost from colonial America. So I wondered if she had lived on my property many years ago when there was no house there, and if there had been that big rock there, and if she'd actually, climbed it, that's all I could think of.
And you felt like maybe she was reaching out to you.
She didn't seem to know I was there. She didn't seem to. It's like I could, hear some of what was going on. Like I'd get answers when I would ask, but it's like someone was narrating it for me. I didn't feel like I was getting the answers. Okay. I didn't feel like I was having a direct conversation with her.
Okay. And
she would typically have her back to me because for whatever reason I'm just, coming in and would see the back of her, sometimes the side. And this just went on for a long time. So I'm like trying to troubleshoot. Okay, is this some weird anxiety thing? Am I more bothered than I think by being alone here in this big house and big property, on my own so much? And I'm like, no, that really doesn't feel like it. And it was amazing how that bedroom door lock just really made me feel very safe and comfortable. Mm-hmm. But I tried to talk to my husband the first time he came home, and he just kind of gave me the look, and he's like, "Come on, Wendy, ghosts? I don't think so. You're an MBA, you're an educated woman. I'm an MBA. It wasn't fitting our belief system at the time."
So, like, when the first time you said that to him, they say, "All right, Wendy, I'm gonna go get a glass of wine too, okay?"
Yeah, right.
I'm going to go get some shot glasses and this, that. Because what you're saying is actually something that's very difficult to bring up to people. Any kind of haunting in anybody's life. And I give you props that you actually brought it to his attention, because people really fear. And when I say that, I really mean it. Is that they fear telling people these stories because they don't want somebody thinking you're nuts. I have to use the word nuts because that's the way people usually think.
Yes.
And it's very interesting that you talk about the emotion side of it. Did you notice when you were doing that you felt this girl's emotions, but you never ever felt this kind of emotion before? This was all a new emotion to you. Mm-hmm. Like you've never felt that before, or at the strength it was. Mm-hmm. Isn't it weird?
It really was very different. It felt very otherworldly.
Yes.
And just to feel time go back like that, and to just be able to see her. I had never had an experience where I was clairvoyant and had that sort of an ability, and the clairaudience was there too, to be able to speak and to get some of that narrated for me. So it really was very different, and I wanted to help her. That was my overwhelming feeling once I wasn't petrified by this anymore, was, well, I got to help this poor gal, because obviously her beloved, her lover is not coming, and she needs to go.
She needs a friend right now. She needs a friend. Yeah.
She needs to not be so stuck, because all she ever does is climb this big rock and look for a man and wait for a man. It's like the old Spice commercials, if you remember those.
Yeah.
Waiting for your man to come home from the sea.
Ship boy.
It's just terrible to not know what's happened to someone like that. So I could really feel the heartbreak, but I didn't know what to do to help her. I didn't know a psychic. I didn't think to go to a psychic. I didn't think to go to a ghost hunter or ghostbuster. That was just all outside my frame of reference.
Sure. So what did you do?
What I did do, once I knew I was, not a crazy person, because I kind of went back and forth on it because it was so different. I tried to talk with one other person, and she just told me I had anxiety, which, wasn't helpful, and ghosts weren't real, which wasn't helpful. Mm-hmm. And what happened that was extremely validating was, in the couple of years that we lived in the home, we had 3 different visitors stay with us. I never mentioned a word of this experience to them, and just, checked in the next morning. How'd you sleep? You need any more blankets or towels? And each of these 3 different people said to me, "You won't believe the dream I had last night. It was so vivid. And did you know there's this heartbroken young woman? She looks like she's from colonial America, and she is stuck on your property." And my jaw was on the floor, Neal, because I did not share the story, and I knew my husband had not shared the story because he thought it was weird and just really had, not wanted to delve any further into it. So to have 3 different people tell me that, and now my mind is just whirring. How can someone else have the same dream that I did and have the dream wake them up and have an experience? So clearly there was some really strong energy on the property of this ghost.
Yeah, that's exactly the words I was going to say. Whatever is going on, it's a very strong energy for more than just you to be able to see, feel, and be around this. It's very amazing. Please continue.
So what happened next was we moved. We lived there about 3.5 years, and then we relocated from the Boston area out to Seattle. And I had never known what to do to help her. So once we moved, I tried to forget about it. I just thought, well, that's just, we can't explain or understand everything in life. It's just one I have to chalk up to. I don't know what that was about. Mm-hmm. And literally 20 years later, I was at the point where I really was getting on the spiritual path and was working to understand who I was as a soul. And I was divorced, and I had some friends who were psychics. I had friends who were Reiki masters. I just was in a different place in life. And one of my best friends in Seattle contacted me, and she said, I had a really strange experience I need to talk with you about because it involves you. Do you have a couple of minutes? I said, absolutely. She says, okay, you need to be sitting down. I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. So what she told me was she had gone to the bookstore to try and buy the latest Brian Weiss title. And she said what happened instead was just crazy, and it had never happened to her before or since. But she was instead drawn to this book called Sacred Spaces. And she said it was like the book glued itself to her hand once she saw it and, touched it and was looking at the back jacket and reading. And she said, I had to buy that book. So I purchased it. I get home. I try and lay it down on the kitchen counter. And she said, I couldn't lay it down. And I just was hearing, you've got to read a section of this book now. And she was just hearing her higher self, her guides, whatever intuition, whatever name you want to give it. So she skimmed through the index and all the chapter headings, and she read the section on how to clear your home of an unwanted ghost or apparition. Mm-hmm. And she thought, well, that's weird, because my home is great energetically, and she's thinking I'm a Reiki master. I have got good energy in my home, and I clear it regularly. Mm-hmm. So she said after she read that, she's like, okay, I can let go of this book and why ever I was meant to read that. So what happened 2 or 3 nights later, she gets woken up in the middle of the night by her dog just staring at her. How your pets can wake you up by giving you the eye. Yeah, I know that feeling. So she gets up thinking, oh, this is really unusual. I don't normally have to let the dog out in the middle of the night. But she gets up and, doesn't want him waking other family members. So she goes to take the dog out into the backyard. And instead, the dog goes berserk in the family room. And it's barking and barking and looking up at the ceiling. So she just looked up instinctively because that's where the dog was looking. And, she's thinking, did a bat get in the house or something? Is there like an insect or, what's going on? Mm-hmm. And she saw a ghost. And she said, young female, heartbroken from colonial America. And then, so I'm listening to this and I'm like, what the heck? How can she be seeing the same ghost that, I had at my house across the country 20 years ago? I've never shared this story with her. How can she be seeing that same ghost? So she said she worked really hard to clear her house using the techniques from the Sacred Spaces book that she was so compelled to buy. Mm-hmm. And she said it was very hard to get the ghost to leave, and she almost got sucked up into the heartbreak. And her punchline to me was, I need you to know that ghost is you. from colonial America, and you need to clean up whatever you did not complete in that lifetime because you're here again, and it's not okay that you've got your ghost here and your ghost is now starting to bother people.
All right, let me stop you. Okay. So, you're being haunted by yourself. Am I correct?
Yes. Try Googling that.
Yeah, so that is it's like a residual haunting that is playing out through time of a timeline that you lived in.
Yes.
And either you have regressive memories, because I know we're going to get into reincarnation in a minute. I can feel this, right? So it's some kind of regressed memories from a residual haunting where something traumatic happened to you in the timeline. You, correct?
Exactly.
Wow.
So I thank my friend for telling me, and I'm apologizing because I'm just mortified. And this is just the craziest thing I've ever heard of. It's like, how can you have a ghost, and how do you have it go to the light or go wherever it's supposed to be? I mean, I knew that concept. Mm-hmm. And what she told me made it all make sense. And she said, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this until we're talking, but I was in that past life with you, and it feels like we were best friends. And then I said, oh my gosh, you live next door. Our house was right on the water. You're the house to the right. And we're like narrating this past life together at Plymouth Plantation in what's now Massachusetts, where some of the earliest colonial Americans came over from England and other countries, early 1600s, the Mayflower ships.
So we're saying,
we're both
go ahead.
Like going, how can this be?
Right. And that's I hate the word crazy, but that's weird. So she was in the same timeline as your residual. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why I think I went to her for help. And I think because she had just done the Reiki master training, and she's like the most down to earth. She's a laboratorian. She's a medical technologist. You cannot picture a less fanciful person as actually she and I.
Right.
So, but we both knew we were speaking the truth, and that just, something was really, really happening.
So when you guys continue to speak, the more things you start to reflect upon, things just start coming to you after that. They
did. So we both just saw more, information about that past life. But I was really bothered by and concerned by the fact that there was a ghost going around bothering people, and I didn't know the concept of soul retrieval, that you can be bringing this fractured, wounded part of yourself back to yourself by learning the lesson, by often it's forgiveness. I had not forgiven the man who had ghosted me.
Right.
Bad pun intended, because that's what it really turned out to be, was the sea captain who'd brought me over in the 1600s as Anne Warren Little. I was Richard Warren's daughter. He was on the original Mayflower voyage in 1620. And then it was mostly men on the Mayflower because it was very dangerous. No one knew what they were going into with the New World. So wives and children were sent for years later. Right. And I came over aboard the Anne of London with my stepmom and my 4 sisters 3 years later. So just so much information came through about that past life that I had to write a book about it, because it just wouldn't leave me alone. Sure. until I wrote the book to purge all that energy.
Wow,
so what I did next, I'm trying to get her to the light. I'm thinking, what do I do? What am I supposed to do with this? Because as I said, I didn't understand yet the concept of soul retrieval. So next, I went to 2 lovely friends who were both psychics, but again, very, very grounded people, and were doing other full-time jobs, but were also psychic mediums. And I went to each of them in turn and said, I have a situation, and I've known about this colonial American ghost, and I gave them a real short synopsis of it, and said, I think that ghost is me, and I don't know what to do to help her. I don't know how to get her to pass on fully. I don't know how to get her to go to the light. I don't know how to have her not be stuck here as a ghost, because she's clearly stuck and she's clearly heartbroken. And both of them just really listened to the story and said, oh my goodness, yes, I can confirm it for you. I can validate that ghost is you, but I'm so sorry. I know how to clear ghosts, but I cannot clear a ghost that's attached to the person standing there asking me the question, because that's above my pay grade.
Right, and that's like a part of your essence. And,
exactly.
And it's in a way, it's almost kind of like I hate to say this, but it kind of reminds me almost like a poltergeist haunting.
It became like a poltergeist. There was some activity when I would be working. Kids were in bed. My girls were teenagers at the time, and they'd be asleep, and I'd be working alone on the computer, which was in the dining room. And there was some poltergeist activity of just, things crashing about in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And I did have enough sense to know, I thought, I think that's me. I think I've got some really unbalanced energy. Yes. On this whole topic, because that's what I feel poltergeist energy is.
Yeah, because it's acting out. The person is acting out. They don't know that they're acting out. And mm-hmm. It happens more in ladies than it does in men. And mm-hmm. They don't realize it. Now, could your essence of that past life still be in you, because maybe it's confused and it needs an answer, it needs you to help yourself.
Yes.
And it's projecting out to others, like other people are having dreams about this, and the mm-hmm. projection is going out, and it's becoming so
She's trying
strong.
To get help.
Yeah.
Absolutely. She's trying to get attention. She's trying to act out, because I don't know what to, not in any negative sense, not, to harm anyone. She just needs help, and she's trying to get attention.
Exactly, attention. Exactly.
So what happened next was I was referred by one of the two psychics to a spiritual teacher mm-hmm. who could help me with this, who specialized in ghosts and different things. But it took a couple of weeks to get the appointment with her, and I really was feeling compelled. I want to do my own work. I don't know what my own work is. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But let me try praying. Let me try meditating. Let me try journaling. Let me figure out, what I can do on my own. And then I'll have the session with the teacher. That worked out perfectly. I'm sure that's why there was that 3-week wait, because it was much more empowering to figure it out. And what I figured out to do was to just talk with her directly and to just do a ritual for her. And I just explained to her as kindly as I could what had happened in her life and why the sea captain, who had told her that he would come back for her and that she was so special, and had really led her down the primrose path, shall we say. Because guess what? She's in her late teens. And he's married and has children.
Yeah.
And she never knows that.
No, they don't.
So I explained to her as kindly and gently as I could that he basically had a chick in every port.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, he's a pirate kind of thing going on here.
Right. So I just explained this to her, and she was horrified and mortified, and said, well, why didn't anybody ever tell me? And so we just kind of went through it together, and got angry and grieved, and just I just did a special ceremony for her. I had the good fortune that my boyfriend, who woke me up spiritually via match, you probably know what I'm going to say. Yeah. Guess who he was? He was that sea captain.
Wow.
So we were no longer dating at the time, but we were still friends for one very specific reason. We were spiritual seekers together. We found 19 past lives together, and we needed to straighten them out.
Sure.
So I asked him, I said, I've got a crazy story to tell you. They hadn't come up with the Netflix show My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend yet. Sure.
That's a good show. That's a good show.
Sure, it sounded like it. I give him great credit because it probably took me an hour to outline everything I'd learned, because there was so much historical information came through from her that I then wrote in the book. And he just looked at me and he said, I don't know what to say. I want to help you fix this. I don't have the memories that you do, but all I can say is I'm sorry, and I will help you, and you need to do what you need to do. So we went full drama, and my guide said, do a ritual at midnight. And I just gathered, a candle and gathered some things that were representative of that time period, and some crystals, and just, gathered what I could to help her pass over to the light. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing because it was not only like really calling her forward, but it was calling forward Captain William Pierce, from the 1600s. So it didn't feel like there was two of us in the room. It felt like there was four of us in the room. Uh-huh. And we really told them, what had gone wrong, and forgave one another, and just worked to let it go, and saw them both walk into the light. So it was wow. it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's it's finding closure, which is so good. Yes, because actually you're helping yourself out. It's
you
helping
are.
You're helping out those emotions, those dormant emotions that are inside you that you didn't realize you had until that one day you woke up and you saw that girl on the stone, and those were the dormant emotions that you were going through.
Yes, and they must have been just really, really triggered by meeting him again. And I think it was very purposeful, and I'm so grateful mm-hmm. that we met again, because it allowed me to get myself together.
Sure.
In a very literal, very powerful way.
Sure. And and that's great. And sometimes, and I always like to use it like this, some things are just meant to be what they are, and you may not know who you are yet. It could take you 20 to 40 years until you decide who you are or what you want to be. You can't be it when you just graduate from something and hit like 20 years of age. People think that you're going to be this or that. It takes time. And sometimes it takes time to make you to figure out, and it has to be you, the individual, who you are and what you're going to be.
Absolutely.
And you'll figure it out when it happens.
Because the story, it did unfold over many, many years. Sure. It started in 1989 when my husband and I got married. Mm-hmm. It turns out that I knew him at Plymouth, and that all made perfect sense. And it turned out that one of my daughters was my older sister, and that explained why I'd had this energy with her ever since she was about 2 years old. I could just feel this energy from her of, she'd look at me and she would be like, I know better than you. And it was like an older sister energy.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, you're not the only one who's told me these kind of stories. And from what you're telling me, a lot of people who have past life aggression and go through reincarnation, that it's very familiar. One minute you have a child, next minute that child, you find out that it's actually your sister. It's very interesting how we just pop from one body to another body through our essence. It's amazing, mm-hmm. actually.
The cast of characters of who's in my life now that was with me at Plymouth is surprisingly deep. I've got multiple immediate family members, and I was scratching my head of why are so many of us, back. And it was so clear when I meditated, and my guide said, well, Wendy, they all came back to help you clear that up and clean that up, because that was not a good experience for you. You were vibrating at a very low level to be stuck here as a heartbroken ghost for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So my mother in this lifetime was my stepmother at Plymouth. I have the same dad. My stepmom was my mom. The two of them switched roles. My daughter, as I mentioned, my former husband, my former boyfriend. I even have the same cat.
What?
It's like it just goes on. The best friend, who's one of my best friends now, that helped me recognize what was happening. So it was a pretty incredible cast of characters. And the past life regression that I did that helped me put this all together, it was so helpful. And I spoke in that past life regression when I was trying to figure this all out. I spoke as Anne Moore and Little for over an hour during the past life regression. I mean, usually you get 2 minutes or 5 minutes, but I went on and on and on describing that life because there was still such emotion to it. And that's what became a lot of the book.
Wow. One of the things is that what is really, really good about this is, I want to take you back to your beginning of your first time that this happened to you. You went to your husband right away and you told him what happened. A lot of people can't find that strength in themselves. See, and that's when your real story started, is when you found the strength to be able to confide in that person what happened to you. That's when your whole new story of life just started moving along. It was from that moment, I believe.
That's a wonderful way to put it, because, yes, being willing to talk about something that was so outside my belief system and sounded so, crazy and wacky, it really was a big step. And like I said, I was then so fortunate because of the guests validating it, and then, my friend really calling me out on what was going on, but in such a, a gentle, loving way, and saying she would help me with it. It just... everything just came together, so well. And to be able to get her to go to the light with the exact same soul, with the same sea captain who had been such a part of this, it was very cathartic for him to
Good.
Kind of make his reparations for it.
Good. And that's good. You got closure off of it. Now, Wendy,
Yes.
I want to thank you very much for coming on today. This was Wendy Rose Williams. Wendy, do you have anything that you'd like to plug?
Absolutely. People are so welcome to go to my website, which is my full name, wendyrosewilliams.com, and see if I can be of help to you as a past life adventure guide and as an energy practitioner. And I'd also be happy to give away 2 free copies of the book as an audio book, because I did record it as a book too. So the first 2 people that contact me via my website and mentioned that they heard me on your program, Neal, and mentioned Graveside Paranormal, I'll be happy to send them the audio book.
That's very nice of you. That's very nice.
Oh, absolutely. And anyone is welcome to request a complimentary 15-minute phone appointment with me, and let's just get in conversation and see if I may be of service.
Do you have you have your website?
Yes.
Which is what again? Say it again.
wendyrosewilliams.com.
wendyrosewilliams.com.
So my full name, and you can find my books on Amazon and Audible by looking for my full name.
All right. Well, Wendy, thanks for coming on, and thanks for reaching out to me to tell me about your story. That was an incredible story, let me tell you. Next up, and we're going to continue on with Hooky Spooky Stories, is going to be Mr. Jaquez. We're going to be talking about haunted institutions next. Stand by. We'll be right back.
Hooky Spooky Stories.
And we're back. This is Neal with Hooky Spooky Stories. Graveside Paranormal presents Spirits by the Graveside's newish little show called Hooky Spooky Stories. We'll be doing this at least 3 or 4 times out of the year, where we take personal stories from people who have had it either in a work environment, their personal lives, such as like institutions like we're going to be talking about next, or hospitals, or any other kind of thing like funeral homes. So who I want to invite into the house right now, into our little story time, is Mr. Jaquez, who's worked in many institutions in his time. Hey, Jaquez, how are you today?
How you doing, Gib? I'm doing fine.
Good. Now, how long have you been working in institutions total, would you say?
I've been going on my 24th year now.
24 years, that's a long time,
Yeah.
man. That's a long time. How old were you when you started, Bob?
21.
20? Jesus Louises, man. Wow.
Yeah, it was nice and green.
Yeah, you're gonna be retiring. You're gonna be at a very early age when you retire, man.
83, baby.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you on that one. So let's go back to the first institution that you ever worked. You were about 21 years of age. What parent? Now, just so our audience understands, is that a lot of institutions they're have a lot of negative energy around them. The reason why is because you're getting some of the worst in the world that come into these institutions. They're not your favorite person who lives outside, your next door neighbor that you have a barbecue with. No. These are the people that like you don't want to see unlocked out of a door and coming back into society. So what happens is that negative energy keeps building up, and the more they keep entering one after another, going into these institutions, well, more negative builds up. And more negativity builds inside them. Why? Because they can't go do what they want. So I just wanted to give that to them, Jaquez, to explain to them about how it is negative. Am I correct on that? Would you say that, Jaquez?
You know what? You're 100% correct. I think the negative attitude, it's heavy in the prison and jails. It's the people there, they don't want to be there. They're upset. They hate everything. And that place runs on negativity. I mean, if we're going to be honest.
Yes.
Everything is negative. There's really no positive things going forward. I think it's more successful when it's negative for some odd reason. I'm not sure why. But negativity makes that place go, and it goes from inmates down to the officers.
Sure.
And you know as well as I do, Gib, it thrives on negativity.
Oh, yeah. I definitely know that it thrives on negativity. Negativity welcomes negativity. You know, it just is what it is. But let's get to the great stories that I want to talk about, the Hooky Spooky Stories.
Okay.
Tell me from the beginning the first paranormal event you had inside of an institution, Jaquez.
Okay, I was working in Joliet at the time. I started at 21. I was probably 23, 24, and I was in charge of movement. And we used to have this area called the MP, the multi-purpose unit. One side was a gym with carpet in it, and the other side was where people visited. There was a big door in between. The windows were painted gray, so if you could scratch the paint off, you could actually see into the gym, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was sitting hiding out on that side. It was like a Saturday. Visits were over. It was about 8 o'clock at night. Inmates were all up. Everybody was locked down. I was just sitting there watching TV and the MP. And I heard a basketball bouncing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a distinct noise when a basketball bounces on carpet.
Right, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's like a boom, boom. It's not a regular bounce. And I heard it, and I thought maybe it's some of the other officers messing around, whatever. Now, mind you, I'm the only one that had keys to get in there because you had to open 3 doors to get in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking maybe these guys are trying to scare me or trying to jump on me. That's how we play with each other. You know how the jail is.
Sure.
Or prison. So I'm sitting there, and I heard it again. Doom, doom, doom. It was kind of, like, wow. It's just one ball.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked through the little peephole that we had made this thing. I looked in there, and there was nothing. It was dark. And it's an old gym where the lights for that place were, like, in the middle of the gym. So if you went in through the front door, you had to walk in all the way halfway through the middle, and it was like one of those big boxes where you just hit the switch up, and it would turn on all the lights, and they would slowly turn on, like they would start at the back and move the way forward, like doof, doof, doof.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting in there, and whatever. I looked, I didn't see nothing, so I went back, and I thought, you know what, these dudes are probably messing with me. Let me go over there.
Right.
So I said, now let me check again. So I looked again, and I heard the ball faintly. So I was like, yeah, they're messing around. I went to go sit down, and I heard the ball again. This time I heard it bounce heavy. So I looked in there, and the ball was rolling. And I'll never forget seeing that ball roll because the hair on the back of my neck stood up. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah,
like,
basically. Holy shit.
Yeah, holy shit. What the fuck is that? Like, why is this ball moving?
Right.
And it froze me, and I've never felt it. It was like a fear, and I wanted to get away. Then I thought, no, these guys are scaring me. So what I did was I came around, and I'm not really thinking clearly because I'm thinking, okay, I got the key, so whatever. They must have got in somehow. So I checked, I opened 3 doors, and it was pitch dark in there, and there was nobody in there.
Wow.
I locked the key. I locked everything back up, and I got on the radio, and I called for assistance. Now, I didn't get all paranoid, and I just called for my partners, the movement guys, to come over. So from where I'm seeing, it's a big compound. I can see them coming out of buildings. Like, what's going on? I'm telling them, hey, come over here.
Mm-hmm.
So I went over there and I said, hey, I think there's somebody in here. I saw a ball bouncing and stuff. And they're laughing. They're like, dude, you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So we went in there. We swept the joint. Nobody there. Nobody. So I thought, you know what? Maybe I'm imagining things. Locked up. Everybody went back. And I even went back to where I was watching the movie. And I heard the bounce again. Boom. This time clear, like they were right by the door.
Really?
And I stood there, this time frozen, and I looked. I looked through, and I saw the ball moving again. And I was like, okay, that is not nobody, because I let everybody in, I let everybody out. There's nobody locked in there. And the lights had already, had turned them back off. So I had this eerie feeling that it was we had a young man dying there.
Okay.
Playing basketball. Had a heart attack. Kid he was a bad dude. He died in there, and I remember, and that thought hit my head, like, man, maybe he came back. And at this point, I'm not really believing that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
So I left there. I was scared. I was like, you know what? No, that's not normal. Something is moving that ball, and it's not of something that's here.
Right.
And I kind of left it at that. Now, since I was a child, I've always experienced things, and I know some people have it like that. I don't understand why or who. I would dream of things, hear noises, hear whispers, hear my name a lot. But I kind of just let it go. Well, maybe a month later, I'm walking by the gymnasium. Now it's a weight room.
Mm-hmm.
The weight room was, you know how you have stairs going down into a basement?
Yes.
It was just like that. Now the door to get in there, it's again 3 doors. So for somebody to be in the weight room, you would have to go into 3 doors to get in, or that back door which was locked. And I am the only one that had the keys because I was a movement guy. Mm-hmm. So I'm checking the doors, and you know how you would go push and make sure it's locked. Well, before I got there, somebody pushed the door from the other side, and pushed it with force, like boom, 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 boom. And I remember thinking, like, man, there's nobody in there. There can't be nobody in there. So I opened the door as fast as I could, and I turned on the lights, and I walked into the weight room right away. And it was empty. There was nobody in there. And the doors were closed on the other side. And I remember feeling this coldness. I remember the smell. And I don't know why the smell, but it smelled like freshly baked cookies. Like a sweet, I don't know why. It was like sweet smell oven freshly baked cookies. I remember that like yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, and I read, down the line about sweet smells mean something bad or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I know what I felt, and I know I saw the door move with force. And it was force because that door was a heavy prison door. And it seemed like somebody was trying to get out or keep me out.
Right, those doors are really big and thick and heavy, man. They are.
Big, thick, and heavy. So it takes like an energy, some strong body to push it. And I remember thinking after that, I closed the door and I felt this, like, man, something is not right here. I'm not sure what it is, but something is happening. As I walked away from there, the door hit again. Like as I was walking up the little stair thing, somebody pushed the door again. I didn't go back to check. At this point, I was like, you know what? I'm good.
Right.
I tried to ignore it. And, I mean, there was so many little things going on. That year, we had maybe 9 suicides.
Wow.
And there was a lot of negative energy. It was so thick in some rooms, you could feel it. And I believe, and I didn't tell you this last time, but I had just bought a home back then. I met a woman, we got married. We lasted in this house all of 60 days.
Really?
It was so much. I don't know if it was something I brought home or the man that lived there. He died there. I later found out. I spoke to the widow. When we bought the house, we got it dirt cheap. Everything was cool. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is a big house for not a lot of money in Cicero. Mm-hmm. In the nice part of Cicero. And I was like, wow, well, whatever. But from day one, man, we had problems. And there was my ex-wife at the time. She told me that one time when I was sleeping, she saw someone standing over me. And instead of waking me up, she just turned around and ignored it and went to sleep. Wow. And this was said to me a year after we were divorced already. We were just talking about the house. And if you can imagine someone being so happy and in love and everything, everything went from sugar to shit when we moved into that house. Literally. And I honestly believe it was something that I brought home from work. At the time.
You could be right about that. I'm a big believer in certain things do attach to you. But go ahead, continue on with your story.
And I remember that because I would never felt alone in the house. She used to work midnights. I'd be home at night. I always felt noises. I I don't know if I told you, the master bedroom was in the attic.
Mm-hmm.
So I was downstairs. I mean, I was upstairs in the attic, sitting there watching TV, and I heard, if you walked in the basement, you could hear it all the way upstairs. It was wood floors. So it felt like somebody was walking from the basement all the way up to the first floor, up the stairwell into the attic. I could hear like the steps. Dum, dum, dum.
Wow.
I thought it was my wife.
Mm-hmm.
She was a police officer. So I'm like, hey, but I normally would hear the radio.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, hey, I'm upstairs. And then I felt somebody stop at the landing downstairs. Like, you know how you hear that? It's a unique sound of the wood, like where you stop, like, and I felt that. So I'm thinking, like, hey, I'm up there. So I got up and looked, and there was nobody there. So then I started thinking, like, man, am I starting to lose it? You know?
Like maybe someone came home with you from work.
Yes. And I thought maybe I'm going crazy. I was like, this can't be. I'm listening. I'm thinking I'm still paranoid from that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Went back and sat down on the bed, started watching TV again, and I heard it all again.
Mm-hmm.
So I got up as fast as I could, and I ran down the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I thought maybe somebody broke in or whatever. As I ran down, the whole house was empty. Empty as could be. And I remember thinking, like, man. So I came back upstairs. Now I'm nervous. And now my nerves were on 10. I remember feeling fear. I was scared, and I'm not sure why it was such fear like that. Normally, I don't think I would feel like that, but I felt scared, and I'm not scared of a human being. I'm a big dude. I feel I can take care of myself.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, Mr. Jaquez is a very large man that if he grabbed you with one hand, you would know it. So he really physically should not worry too much about his any danger to his physical body.
And I felt fear. I was like petrified. Well, I sat back on the bed, and when I said to myself out loud, I was like, man, that's enough. It felt like they ran from the top all the way down, like all the way to the basement.
What?
And I was like, holy shit. I got up, and I sat at the landing, kind of expecting the worst to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, about 10 minutes later, my ex-wife at the time, my wife at the time came in the house. I hear the radio. She's talking to me and, having a full conversation. And I shared with her what happened, and she's like, oh, that's just your mind, like it's nothing. And I was like, no. I said, they're playing games with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was like, oh, no, it can't be. She didn't believe in that. But yet, she had saw that apparition and never told me,
Wow. That is scary.
Moving forward, at work, I started experiencing stuff on a more higher level. I would work overtime, and I would fall asleep in. I wasn't supposed to, but everybody was locked up, and I'd be like in a pod area,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden I'd hear a clap, like a bah, like right by my ear, and I would wake up.
Mm.
And I never quite understood that, but every time that happened, maybe a minute later, a white shirt will walk in, a supervisor.
Mm.
Hey, what's going on? Whatever, sign the books. And it was kind of like a warning,
Like,
And I think like somebody was looking out for me, maybe another officer. That's when I really started researching ghosts and stuff of that nature. And I felt like, okay, maybe I have an open spirit where they feel like they could talk to me or follow me or whatever.
possibly sensitive. Yeah.
Something was happening, and I was like, okay, let me, I guess, prepare myself to see what I'm dealing with. And that would happen, man. And it got to the point where I went to, one day before work, I walked into a white hen. It was a lady, a Mexican lady. Never, ever did she talk to me. She was real quiet. I'd go get a sandwich. She would just say, hey, take my money, and nothing. This time I walk in there, and I asked for my sandwich. Then I went to look at some chips or something, and a whole row of candy just fell. And I remember I looked up and I told her, I'm like, hey, that wasn't me. I go, I didn't do that. And she goes, I know, it's them. They followed you.
Mm.
And that creeped me out. And then I said, who? She's like, oh, they follow you. They probably stay with you a lot. And I said, who was they? And then she's like, well, the ones that keep you up at night. Because I don't know if I told you, I would get poked in the middle of the night a lot. And I think, like, I'd be sleeping, all of a sudden I'd feel somebody touch my back
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. And I honestly thought I was having a nervous breakdown. you know the type of work we live in, the type of things, how things are, high anxiety and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I thought maybe that's it. I thought it's in my head. It's that's not happening or whatever. But ever since that point, I was sensitive to things. I ended up leaving there and going to. I was there for almost 11 years. I left there and I went to another jail in Chicago now.
Mm-hmm.
I left, and I actually had a shared experience with another officer. He's a sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
We got off elevator in the same division me and you worked at, Gib.
Right.
And we were walking from one elevator, and if you walk across the hall, there's another elevator. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
We're walking, and me and him both at the same time saw a figure about 6 feet tall going from one side to the other in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like clear as day. It was bluish, smokyish,
Mm-hmm.
And it moved, it glided, kind of. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And I remember we looked at it and we kept talking like nothing had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny to me because I knew. Hold on one second. I knew what I saw, and I knew he knew what I saw,
Mm-hmm.
and he saw the same thing. But we didn't say nothing. We didn't talk. We just kept going. So later on, he asked me, he goes, "Are we going to talk about that?" And I said, "No."
No,
And he said,
let me just stop you for 1 second. That was on the first floor.
"No, I don't need it. Hold on one second. Hey, I don't need the keys. Just keep them." That was on the first floor. Yes, that was on the first floor.
Right,
there.
that was on the first floor. Right, I know what you're talking about. Go right ahead.
And we didn't talk about it, but later on, while we're having coffee, he just said, "Did we see that?" I said, "Yeah, we did."
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "What was that?" I said, "Dude, I have no idea what we saw, but I know what I felt."
Right, now, just so you know, just so our listeners know, I've known Mr. Jaquez for quite a while, and I know what he's talking about. There have actually been eyewitness accounts in certain things that are called tiers of inmates going, "Oh my God, did you see that? The thing just came in my room." Like, you would go do your half-hour check, and all of a sudden someone would say, "Hey man, did you see that thing go in there?" And I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" That large shadow. And in a certain area, I do know that was happening because of back in the day, and I understand these are stories that I hear from other people who started way before you and I. And they would tell us certain stories about a lot of suicides, just like you were bringing up. And what happens is a lot of these, not just for like penal institutions or anything like that, but a lot of suicides in any place, any kind of realm, they're lost souls in a sense. And people say that they see these shadow-like creatures around the areas. Could they be some of these lost souls? Possibly. It's a big possible. So I just wanted to throw that in there, just to help verify your story just a little bit more on that.
Okay, yeah. I felt, man, things, especially in that area,
Mm-hmm.
things were really, really, there was a rash of suicides there.
Mm-hmm.
Officers have passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And like we talk about negative energy, we have a lot of negative people working there, and I'm thinking they were kind of not at peace,
Sure. Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
they would come back and would come back at the worst times. There was another time, and I think I told you about this one in Division 3, the one that was knocked down.
Right.
So at that point, I was working. It was set up. I was working on overtime. So if you were there, you were on a tier. Normally you would have a partner, but on overtime you were by yourself. So you'd sit in a pod, but there was these two hallways, and they were long hallways. I believe they had, I think maybe 60 cells or something like that. Is that correct, Gib?
Yeah, it's about that. Yeah.
And I'm sitting there looking on the camera. Now we weren't supposed to go in without backup or nothing like that, but of course, well, we do what we do. And I'm sitting there looking at the camera, and I'm looking at these little orbs in the hallway. And I kept looking, and I was staring, and I was wondering what the little lights were,
Mm-hmm.
And I had already read up on this stuff, but it took me a while to become a believer, because I guess I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe that's what I was seeing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was more fear than anything. And I'm sitting there, and I was just like, oh, that's weird. And I could hear banging on the doors, which is something that happens every day.
Mm-hmm.
So they kept banging something. You know what? Maybe somebody got hurt. Let me go down there. I don't want, I didn't want to deal with a suicide, nothing like that. So I go down there and walking into that hallway. Oh, I jammed the door up at the front so it wouldn't lock because it was
Right.
if it locked, you needed somebody to get you out.
Right.
So I'm like, whatever. I jammed it. I thought I jammed it good enough where it wouldn't lock. So I walk in the hallway and I go in there and they're quiet. Everybody's eerily quiet. So I start walking down the hall and I get to where I thought where the noise was coming from. And there's this young African American kid. He had to be about 18. And the reason the race and the ages are important is because of the communication. Right across from him was this man who was he's a Mexican guy. He was about 67, 68. He was earning a DUI. Didn't speak a drop of English.
Mm-hmm.
So these two guys are not making a story together because they're not talking.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, you know what I'm saying? It's not like two young guys messing around. No, it was totally, they have nothing in common.
Right.
So I get to the door and I'm like, dude, why are you banging on the door? So the young kid tells me, what's up with that chick walking up and down this fucking hall? I go, what chick? He says, I don't know, man. She keeps walking up and down the hall, laughing and laughing and laughing. And I'm like, I go, dude, are you high? He goes, no, man. She goes into that last room. Now, if you remember, the last cell was a single cell.
Right. Right.
So I was like, get out of here, dude. So I turn around, and that old Mexican man tells me in Spanish, he goes, I thought they couldn't allow women in here. And I was like, what? He goes, I thought women couldn't be in here. He's talking to me in Spanish. And I'm like, they're not. He goes, who's that lady walking around? I go, what lady? He goes, I don't know. I see some lady. She's laughing, almost like she's crying. I go, dude, I stopped playing. I go, is this your friend or something? She was like, I don't know him. And now I'm talking to him in Spanish, and I know when somebody speaks and don't speak. He did not speak English, So then he's telling me, he's like, she keeps walking up and down the hall. I don't know if she's coming from the shower or something, but she's laughing. So I was like, and I thought the orbs. That's what I was seeing them go back and forth, So then I go, where did she go? Because now I'm kind of like, okay. He goes, she went into that last cell. And they didn't know this, but I knew that was a single cell. And it was so old there that they had porcelain toilets. Not even the steel ones,
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah, I remember that. They're like yesterday.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They had porcelain toilets. And I remember thinking, you could break those, that's a weapon. That was going through my head. And they're like, she went in there. Asked me if I went to go check. Absolutely not. Because I felt that line of cold air on my back. Like, it felt so strange. It was like somebody rubbed a finger down my back.
Right.
And I started walking away. I was like, okay, I'm out of here.
I'm done.
Like, hang on.
I'm done.
Yeah, as I'm walking, it felt like somebody was walking right by my neck, like right behind me. Like, almost walking me out, And I did not want to turn around. I just kept walking, and I'm thinking, like, man, this is bullshit. Like, something is happening here. This is something. There should be no woman here.
Right.
These guys are not lying.
Right.
But I'm like, I got to get out of here. So I'm walking as fast as I can.
Right.
The lights are kind of flickering. Now, mind you, that is something that could have happened because the place was old,
Sure.
Lights never worked. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe that's just a chance thing right now or whatever. I was like,
and
lights are flickering.
Now
I was like, this is like the movies.
Right. Now,
Go ahead,
I'm sorry.
So then I reached the door where I had jammed to get open, and it was closed.
What?
And
So they removed that thing.
I just about shit myself. And I was sitting there, and I started pounding on the door. Now, they didn't want to look paranoid, so I waited and waited. Radio, of course, is not working. So I sat there, honestly, about 30 minutes in full-out terror. But all I kept telling myself was, this is not happening, this is not happening, this is not happening. Finally, somebody came up in the elevator. Now, mind you, the elevator kept coming from the basement up, and nobody would get out. It was like somebody was calling it. You remember that would happen with that elevator?
Yeah, you would hear the bing. You hear the bing. Yeah.
But nobody would get out.
Yeah.
Finally, somebody got out, and he opened the door, hey, what's up, man? And I didn't say nothing.
Yeah.
I played it cool. That's how I locked myself out.
Yeah, because you gotta play it cool, man.
Yeah, oh,
Gotta
cool. I
play
played
it
it
cool.
cool. I
Yeah.
was sweating.
Yeah. Because yeah, go ahead.
And he was, and I casually started talking,
Mm-hmm.
and then he's like, "Oh yeah, the Lou's gonna stop by later," and it was an older lieutenant came up later on to sign the book, and I asked him, I said, "Hey, what was this place?" And I believe it was a female prison. They also had like a nursery and stuff like that there.
Yes, they did.
And I didn't they do medical procedures there too.
So, yeah. So originally the building that Mr. Jaquez is talking about used to be a building where they housed female inmates. A majority of them were all psych inmates. And there was the third floor used to be called the old ART or ARU unit. And what would happen there, they would have the psychs of the psychs there, the worst of the worst. We're talking about people who've done some very heinous crimes. And what's interesting about Mr. Jaquez is talking about is that some years back, that building was, there was no inmates inside of it whatsoever. It was vacant. And we would have to every now and then go inside there to check it, to make sure everything was, it was actually protocol. Where you had to go inside there to make sure that it was closed and nobody was in there. So one time, Jaquez, I went in there with another officer, and I knew about the real stories of that place. And I knew what was going on. And so I'm thinking to myself, man, they picked the right guy for the right job today. Yeah. And this is nighttime. And the guy who was going with me, he goes, man, I know you're kind of weird, man. He goes, I know you get into these kind of things, man. He goes, do me a favor, don't do nothing stupid. Please don't. He goes, I don't like stuff like this. Seriously, man. I go, all right, no worries. So, fair enough, no worries. So I started going in there, and I couldn't keep my word. And so I started calling out certain names that I knew of. And all of a sudden, you just start hearing a bunch of whispers. And he starts freaking out. The guy who's with me goes, Gibby, are you freaking nuts? He goes, oh my God, what is going on here? And we had to check floor after floor after floor. And that second floor, all you hear is... And he's like this, oh my God. He goes, dude, seriously, let's just finish up and go. He goes, I don't like you. He goes, I don't like you at all. He goes, come on, man, we got to go. So sure enough, we leave. No big deal. In my heart, I'm like this, oh, hell yeah. That was awesome. And he's like telling everybody, he goes, man, don't ever have me go with that guy ever again. Please don't. And what's odd is the next day. And every shift has to check it on the next shift. So these officers went there the next day. That's part of their protocol. And they start seeing on the camera a female, like you were just saying, going from one cell to the other cell, back in the same kind of hallway that you're talking about. So I know what you're saying, and I know that that's very real from eyewitness accounts.
And you know what, Gib? We never talked till recently. I mean, we worked together, but we never really had a conversation.
Yeah, you until I put that one thing up. You know what? We've never spoke. We say hi in passing, but you always worked a different shift, and I worked a different shift, and I was just like, hey, what's up, man? And that's basically the extent of being in your conversation. And so what he's telling me is something I've already known. And it's very interesting that he says it because it just helps the stories that they're very real, that happen in penal institutions, jails. Negative energy starts to cause a lot of these things to happen, these supernatural, paranormal occurrences to happen. It's a very, actually, I hate to use the word natural, but it's actually a natural thing that actually happens in a negative place like that. But do you got any more cool stories for us?
You know what, Gib? I just thought of one. When I worked back in Joliet, we used to put guys in full leather restraints because a lot of these guys were entering schizophrenia or in the middle of it, you know? And it took 4 guys my size to get that kid down. He was about 160 pounds.
Right.
And he was powerful. It didn't seem human, you know?
Sure.
So we got him down, and I swear to God, he would physically change when he was going through these bouts, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it was, But he would get really, really evil and spit and say all sorts of stuff. And we used to have to watch him one-on-one because he would get out of his restraints and cut himself. He was a cutter.
Yeah.
So this particular time, we wrestled him down. We tied him down to the bed. And he's sitting there, and he started, like, lifting his body from the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could imagine, his feet were tied at the ankles, and his hands were tied at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to the side, I'm sorry, to the side. There was no way he could just lift himself, but it was like somebody was picking him up from the waist. And he was picking himself out. And it was so creepy. And he would cause himself to ejaculate like that. I'll never forget that.
Oh my God.
It was fucking one of the worst things I've seen. Like what the fuck?
Right.
And then he stopped and he looked at me, all calm, and he talked to me like his regular voice, you know?
Uh-huh.
And then he goes, "Hey, Jaquez," and I'm like, "Hey, like this just didn't happen, you know?"
Yeah.
And then he's like, "My shoulder hurts."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, yeah, man, you know, you were fighting." I said, "You know, you'll be fine." And I was like, "Just relax, dude." Because this kid creeped me out. He was a little dude, but just the way he looked at people, he creeped me out.
Mm-hmm.
And then he laid back down, and that's when he started to switch. Because then he started talking to me. But he was talking to me, and he was telling me stuff that I had not told nobody about my dreams and how. Since I was a kid, I've had people visit me in dreams.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like dead relatives, whatever. They would say stuff to me, and this is something that's happened to me since I can remember, maybe 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just, I don't know why that happens. It's just something that's happened. He said something to me about that. He said to me, "I know you're nervous because they come in your dreams." He goes, "But they never leave me alone. They're all over here right now. They're packed in here."
Oh, man.
And then I said to him, I'm like, "Who?" He goes, "You know who." And he was calm, and then he laughed. He started laughing. He goes, "But them two guys and two people that are with you don't let nothing happen." And that, I remember when he said that to me, that lady had said something to me about people following me, you know? And she had said they were children. And, you know, throughout my life, I've heard giggling of little kids. I've heard people call my name. People call my nickname as a kid. My name is, well, I don't know if I should say my first name, but they would say my nickname that only my little brothers and sisters would say because they couldn't say my first name. And they would say that like in the middle of the night. I remember one time someone said my name in the house, and I looked out the room, and my grandma looked out the room, and then she goes, "Who called you?" I was like, "I don't know." It was like 3 a.m. And then I was like, "What?" She goes, "Somebody just called you, right?" I was like, "Yeah, did you call me?" She was like, "No, but I heard it in the hallway." And my grandma's a no-nonsense type of person, and she's a believer.
Sure.
So she started praying, and then she's like, "I keep hearing them say your name." And I don't know what type of crazy phenomenon it was, but I know I would wake up between 3 and 4 o'clock to this day. Most of my life, I wake up at that time.
Yeah, that's the devil's hour.
I wake up at that time, and I'm aware of that now. I wish I wasn't. Because I wake up and, you know, I'll go check on my son, whatever, my girlfriend, and I'm sitting there, and I have a weird sense of, like I'm not alone. You know, but it's gotten to be almost a calming thing now. Because it almost feels like I have somebody there warning me.
Sure.
I've never been hurt at work. I've never been injured. I've always felt a sense of protection almost. Like something tells me, okay, this is going to get ugly, so prepare yourself.
Right.
And it's not a voice I hear or nothing like that. It's just a gut feeling that's always happened. And I know a lot of that comes with experience, but I also believe, and I became a firm believer, that I've always had somebody there watching me since I was a kid.
Oh, you know, I'm a big firm believer in that too. You know, it's like you just kind of know, you know, you're walking into something, but everything's gonna be all right, man. Everything's gonna be cool.
Everything will be cool.
Yeah.
And it's scary stuff, man.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, and working those places, people don't realize it. Like we talked about in the beginning of this, it's a very negative atmosphere. Most of the people who come into work are usually people who are positive in life, and then for some reason that negativity that is there, it causes disruption in their lives, and they don't realize it because people I'm seeing things that normal people would not see if they were working at like some insurance agency or something. It is a different world. And
Yeah, let me ask you, and you've been there 20-some years, right?
yeah.
Do you find yourself almost being more comfortable in the jail setting now than in real life?
Oh, dude, I remember when I first started working, and I'm not going to lie to people. Don't ever think that you're the toughest guy in the room, because believe me, there's somebody a little bit further down from you who is.
Oh, no doubt.
And the thing is, when I first started walking into places like that, I was very nervous. I didn't know what this was. I was a young kid just like you. And the thing is that nowadays, it is what it is. I'm used to what it is, but I'm aware of what it is at the same time. I know what it can be and what it can't be. But I go in there as the same person I am in and out of normal life into that place, because that's the one thing. And I'm pretty aware of what those places are. And it'll come off you. It just does. I don't know if it ever happened to you, but it's already gone past me where I'm just like, yeah, whatever.
Well, you know what? I'm there now. I'm very at peace with everything that happens now.
Sure.
Because I feel like, okay, it's not going to hurt me.
Yeah, and like you're talking about
there.
And the thing is that we're talking about, just being in that place, that kind of place. But the paranormal stuff in those places are very strong. People don't realize it. I've actually have more stories. I actually think I've had more stories, paranormal events happen at that place there than on the tours that I do or the places I go sometimes. I'm telling you, if I could write a book one day just about the place that we're at, just about paranormal stuff, people would be like, "This, are you serious?" But
yes, I have a ton of stuff that's happened to me while I'm sleeping. Geez, I could, at another time, I'll share those with you first.
Sure.
But it's, I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
No.
Yes. So, are you a believer in heaven and hell?
Yes, I am a believer in heaven and hell. Now, heaven, this is what I believe in heaven. Heaven is a very good place to go to, but sometimes I think it's what's inside your mind of what heaven is. If it's going to be a very tranquil place, it's going to be that way. Are you going to see angels and stuff? I don't know. I don't know that. Hell, I don't know if hell is exactly what is always written in books. Do I believe that when people die and they do heinous crimes like certain criminals, do they go to a place like that? Yeah, but the thing is that like a lot of Christians and Catholics believe, and other people, when I talk to other people, it's about the forgiveness in yourself. You see, it's not that, this is what I've read and what I kind of think is that it's not that God forgives you. Your biggest critic is what? Always yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you said that. I think that's why my life has changed for the positive. Before, for a long time, you get into the jail guard lifestyle. Adultery, drinking, you're a jail guard. That's what we're supposed to do, And I've had 2 failed marriages, and, I think when I found peace and forgave myself for whatever I was being tormented by, my life changed.
Sure.
I think everything got positive. I think even, my dreams, the noises I hear, everything became more like, I guess not attacking, I became more accepting of everything that's happening. Because I've often wondered, what are those things? Are they like lost souls? Are they stuck?
Right.
Could I possibly end up like that one day?
Now,
how come they didn't cross over?
Now, you see, you're getting into something that's deep. And I do love talking about deep stuff. So I'm going to just talk about something for a second, and then I think I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay.
Is that for our audience, anybody who works in a law enforcement atmosphere, penal institutions, or in any kind of institutions, period, or has to deal with other things in society, we're all just human, and that's what we are. And the thing is like I've talked on many different podcasts, and I've talked on tours and some of the shows that we talk about, we're all can fall into these traps where the door opens up a little bit because we're moving into a different kind of lifestyle. And we kind of crack open that door. And when you crack open a door into the negativity, well, then it kind of seeps in. And I know I've said this many times. And at first, you're kind of like, that was no big deal. No big deal whatsoever. So the next time that door opens up just even a little bit more, and more and more. Until that door is wide open, and now you can't close it because it's too heavy. Kind of like those big jail doors.
Yeah.
And what happens is, you have to figure out what's truly going on in your life. And I'm not trying to get all Christian, Catholic, or get on a soapbox with you. But the thing is that it is very real. And the man, like you said, and like I said, you're your biggest critic. And you're the only one, or that person's the only one, who can ever really find that real salvation by actually just forgiving themselves. I could sit around here and say, I'm going to be forgiven for this because God's going to let me go. I could quit this crime because Jesus already died for me. No, it all starts with you, because you have to forgive yourself. And the minute you did it, what happened? You started feeling a little bit different about yourself. Am I right?
Big time.
And you want to know what that was? That's the opposite of when the door's open. Now the door's closing. Does that make sense?
Makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave that with tonight, and we thank Mr. Jaquez for coming on, and we're going to continue on with one more Hooky Spooky story with our girl, Michelle from Graveside Paranormal. She's going to be our next guest on Hooky Spooky Stories. Thanks, Jaquez, for coming on tonight.
Thank you, Gip.
All right, brother.
All right, goodbye.
Hooky Spooky Stories.
All right, we're back. I'm with Graveside Paranormal's awesome partner here at Graveside Paranormal and really cool storyteller, Shell Ward. Dun, dun, dun. Hey,
Hello,
Michelle.
everyone.
Hello.
How you doing?
How are you?
I am very good, thank you.
Good. All right, so Michelle has a hooky, spooky story to share today. So
Don't
please,
be too
Michelle,
scared.
please proceed.
So, my first story, I'm actually going to call this Bunko Bitches.
The Bunko Bitches.
The Bunko Bitches. It's somewhat funny, but a little spooky at the same time. Now, this story, for anyone who doesn't know what Bunko is, it's pretty much a dice game. And it's a bunch of women who like to get together. We used to get together once a month, and one person would always host Bunko. And every year, I always seem to pick Halloween month, the spooky month of October.
Sure.
So, I would always like to decorate, scare the girls when I can. Now, my neighbors know me. They know I'm the crazy Halloween lady, so they enjoy when all the girls come over, too. So, there's about 8 girls. Now, I had 4 girls sitting in my living room at a table. 4 girls were sitting in my kitchen. We're all playing Bunko. I'm in the kitchen. The other crazy girls, Bunko Bitches, are in the living room.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Bunko gets pretty crazy. There's a lot of music. We've got swearing, there's drinking, and it's that motto like Vegas, what happens at Bunko
Stays
at Bunko.
Okay.
So normally it gets loud, everyone's screaming, having a good time. All of a sudden, I just started hearing yelling and screaming coming from my living room.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I think, all right, what the heck are they doing? Just being crazy broads, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And and all of a sudden, they're just screaming, and I look out there, and I see one girl stand up. Her face is white as a ghost, her eyes are wide, and she's turning around, pointing at the wall behind her. Well, the wall that's behind her is actually my craft room.
Mm-hmm.
So I go out in the front room, thinking, what is up with you girls? They're like, we are hearing strange noises coming from the room behind us. And the one girl actually described it as if someone was in the room throwing wooden blocks, like, those little wooden blocks kids would play with the ABCs on the blocks.
Yes.
That's what they described it as, someone throwing wooden blocks at the wall. So I go into the room, look around, nothing is out of place, nothing is strange, everything's normal. I'm thinking, okay, They're just acting a little weird. And then I think, well, maybe it's my neighbor across the street trying to play a joke on us. So I go outside, walk around the whole perimeter of the home. I see nothing. So I let it go. A few of them were a little spooked out. So the next day, now keep in mind, I looked into this room the night before. Nothing was out of place. Everything was normal. The next day, I opened the door to the craft room, and it was as if a tornado blew through the room. Everything exploded in there like a whirlwind. And I had a tall bookcase, and that's where I kept all my art supplies. And next to that, I'm an old-fashioned girl. I still keep CDs. I have like over 500 CDs, but I have a huge CD rack right next to this bookcase. And it's pretty heavy. It's 5 foot tall, maybe 3 foot wide. It's not like you can easily pick it up and move it.
Sure.
So next to that CD rack, see, I'm trying to paint this image in everyone's mind, there's a closet door. Somehow, it seemed as if the bookcase was pushed to the side. The CD rack was also pushed in front of the closet door. And it seemed as if the top half of the bookcase, like someone just picked it up and moved it over. It didn't fall off of the bookcase. It was lopsided. And again, everything was just thrown off the shelves. All my papers thrown over the room. Pretty much, I opened the door. I took one look. I said, oh, hell no. And I backed myself out of the room. And I think it was probably 2-3 days before I could go back into that room.
Now you've had issues. You've had issues in your home before.
Yes, nothing that traumatic. That was probably the most insane thing I think that has ever happened at the house I live at now. I grew up in a haunted house, and that house I explain as Amityville Horror without the oozing blood.
Yeah, you don't need that. That's a lot of cleaning.
Oh, yeah. No oozy blood. But, yeah, I just found it interesting that they were hearing these strange noises the night before, but nothing was in disarray then. So...
yeah, you just never ever know. You just never ever know.
Right. But for me, I like when things happen when other people are around. I had 8 witnesses, so it wasn't just me experiencing it. I had 8 people in the house at the time this happened.
And you've told me, you've told me before that there is something definitely in the home that you live in now. I know you've told me that, or you confided in me that there is.
It's not malevolent. There's nothing evil here. I live right behind a cemetery.
Right.
So I think that might have a little to do with what goes on here. I also think that part of the land where my house is was part of that cemetery. I don't think there were any bodies buried here. I have not researched that. I did see a few maps of
there's a
the
lot,
area.
There's a lot of places that are like that where through real estate or something like that throughout the years that bodies are moved or maybe not moved. And homes are built over them because they wanted to make money. And like we talked about back in the 1920s, there was grave digger strikes and this and that. And you don't know where some of these bodies went.
Right.
So it's a possibility.
Correct.
Right. So what's your second story?
Well, my second story is actually something that I remembered and recalled as a child. And like I mentioned, that house was insane. Let's just say there were events happening all the time. Not just me, my mom, sisters, relatives, friends. But one of the scariest stories I can remember, and this one I'm going to call the window knockers.
The window knockers. Let's introduce
the window
this.
knockers.
Hold on. Let me introduce. Who's there?
Hello.
It's the window knockers.
It's Girl Scout cookies.
Oh, I just bought some, by the way. I just bought some.
Oh, man. Yeah. Pecan Sandies.
Yeah. All right, go ahead.
Okay. So, when you're a teenager, back when you're a kid, you try to make $1 doing odd jobs. Whether you're doing paper routes, shoveling snow, babysitting. I was that girl in the neighborhood. I did anything to try to make some extra money.
Mm-hmm.
So one night I was actually babysitting the girl across the street, and Mom and Dad came home, and they made sure I got to my house across the street. So as I walked into the kitchen, my mom was still awake, waiting for me to come home safe. My sisters were sleeping, and my dad was a Chicago fireman. And at the time, he was not home. He was out on his 24-hour shift as a fireman. So it was just us girls home. And while I was talking to my mom in the kitchen, the phone rang. And I remember it was really weird because it was after midnight. She answered the phone, gives me the receiver, and says, I think it's for you. I think it's your paper route boss. Now, if anyone who had a paper route, you had to get up 4 or 5 in the morning.
Oh, hold on. Let me just stop you. Was that the penny saver?
It was actually Southtown Economist.
Southtown Economist.
Yeah.
I did a penny saver. I just had to ask. All right, go ahead.
But yeah, you would get your papers at 3 or 4 in the morning,
Yep.
and you had to roll them and put them in the bags and put the rubber bands on. So you had to do all of this.
Yes.
So we thought it was my boss, maybe calling late with some message about the newspaper route. And it was a man, deep voice, and all he kept saying was, I am watching you. I'm watching you.
Hold on. All right, let me take this back. Your mom answers the phone.
Yes.
And it's a man's voice.
Yes.
And you're a child. And she thinks it's probably a boss from the Southtown Economist.
Yes.
And it says, I'm watching you.
Correct.
Oh, continue, please.
Well, we didn't know what to think of that. First, we thought it might have been the guy across the street that I babysat for, because they were jokesters. Mm-hmm. So we looked out the front window. All the lights were out at the house. So we didn't think it was anybody from over there. All of a sudden, we heard somebody knocking on our front door.
Like this? Okay.
That's right.
Just like
that.
Okay.
Just like that.
Go ahead.
So my mom goes to the front door. Nobody's there. So comes back. She's like, okay, this is really weird. Then we had a doorbell on our back door. Doorbell rings on the back door. Mom goes back there. Nobody's at the back door. And I'm trying to explain my house. Like in our living room in my old house, if you stood on our porch, our windows are really big. So you could see through the window if someone was on the porch. Right.
Yeah.
It sounded as if someone was standing on the front porch knocking on the window. Couldn't see anybody. Knock, 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 knock. So, yeah. Boom, 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 boom. So, now we're starting to get a little scared. Now, my mom was a tiny little thing. Tiny little fireball, but she was not afraid of anything. She would beat you up. She didn't care how big you were. So she started getting a little scared. And then it sounded as if someone was standing, people or whatever it was, at every window on the lower part of the house, banging on the windows all at once. Boom, 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 boom. Every window was being rattled, being banged on. You couldn't see anything. And that freaked my mom out enough where she's like, go upstairs, get your sisters. Got my sisters up out of bed, and we actually went down to my aunt and uncle's house, who lived down the street, and spent the night there. We even brought the dog with. So, and that was the only time that we ever fled the house.
And that was the house
that we were that afraid.
That's the house that you said you lived in that was haunted.
Yes, that is correct.
So let's get this right. First, you receive a phone call saying, yes, I'm watching you. Then you hear a door knock in the front. Nobody's there. Then you hear a doorbell in the back. Nobody's there. And it continues on. And you people fled the home. Am I correct?
Yes.
See,
that is correct.
Now that's scary. Was it daytime or nighttime?
This was nighttime. It was probably about 1 in the morning by then.
Yeah, and back then we didn't have cell phones or any of that stuff, so you don't know who the hell that was.
Exactly. And like I said, I did not recognize the voice. Mm-hmm. And my mom was like, I think it's your paper route guy. She wasn't really sure. But for her to be that scared, then that's what made me scared. Because my mom was never afraid of anything.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of things happened in that home, you told me.
Yes, that's just one of many stories.
Do you have anything else for us today, Michelle?
Well, not at the moment.
But you can continue into another segment of Hooky Spooky Stories in the future, correct?
That is correct. Stay tuned. I have plenty of stories to tell and creep you out with.
Yes. And that is, the second one is definitely creepy because that would have scared me too.
Yes.
Especially being a kid. So I want to thank Michelle for coming on. I want to thank Mr. Jaquez for coming on. I wanted to thank Wendy Rose Williams for coming on, for telling us the story of the haunting of Wendy Williams, which was a really cool story. And Jaquez's stories about haunted institutions. And of course, Graveside Paranormal's very own Michelle Ward for coming on today. And I want to say you're more than welcome. And I want to say Happy Easter to everybody, but I want to leave you with a song, and let me explain. Every year, I have an uncle named Donald, and Donald passed away last year. But every year, he would tell us this morbid song, and I want to share it with everybody, because I believe, even though it was very morbid, it's something that all of us kids always remembered, and we've always taught our kids. Some might not like it, some might go, they might have a little giggle. But no matter what, I'm going to tell it because it's my little story of how my Uncle Donald told us this song. And I'm going to start it off. Happy Easter, Happy Easter. The Easter Bunny has broke his leg. There's blood all over them Easter eggs. Happy Easter.